Christian parenting.
You love your kids, right? God says love is patient. Join us as we talk about this today on Family Vision.
Hi, my name is Amy Rienow. Welcome to Family Vision, the podcast from Visionary Family Ministries, encouraging families through practical, encouraging, and real conversations.
Hi, Rob Rienow here with Visionary Family Ministries alongside my beautiful bride, Amy.
It's wonderful to be here.
Today we're going to talk about patience in our parenting. Patience in our parenting, not something that I do very well. If we're asked, do we love our children? We would say absolutely yes. If we are asked, are we patient with our children? We would say we're trying, sometimes. Well, God is actually the one who connects love with patience. 1 Corinthians 13:4, where God defines love, the very first thing he says is that love is patient.
Yes, and that is very defining, isn't it? That's the first characteristic that we get in that description of love, that love is patient. And first of all, just something to be really thankful for. I think we don't often think and really just let ourselves dwell on the fact how God is so patient with us. And It reminds me of a story of early parenting when I was struggling with a behavior with RW. And I think I was, we were at my parents' house and I was dealing with Lainey. I think she was a fourth baby. I kind of had, something to deal with the little one. So that means RW would have been about 6.5. And it seemed to me like I was having the same conversation over the same discipline conversation over and over with him. And I remember kind of pulling him aside, like, RW, like, I can't believe that I am telling you again, not to hit JD when, you know what I mean? Something, like, haven't we gone over this? Like, shouldn't you know that, And so he was like, okay, Mom, yeah, he felt bad. And I was, and he left and I was just kind of like in my spirit, just a little bit miffed, like, what is going on? Like, why do I have to keep telling him? And I just still can remember the Holy Spirit just so convicting me, like, kind of like, so, Amy, like, how many, like, are you a perfect person or do you have things that you struggle with over and over again, And I was like, oh, yeah, I kind of do have the same struggles. And so is your husband a perfect person? Like, or does he kind of have the same things that I'm like, yeah, he does. And he does. And so then what do you think, what's in you that makes you think that that RW is going to be a perfect person or RW is not going to have? And here I am thinking about this issue with a 6.5-year-old. I mean, it's kind of crazy.
By this point, he really should.
Right? He really should have known. But it was my lack of patience in my spirit, in particular, that I thought it was just surprising to me. Again, not really being grateful for how God is patiently working in me and letting that shine through with the way I'm dealing with my kids.
Yeah, that's a great example. You talked about that it's pretty amazing that God puts patience as the first in the definition of love, but patience also comes up in the definition of the fruit of the Spirit, that living in the Spirit, we are to be filled with love, joy, peace, and patience. I remember back in youth pastor days, we had a wonderful team of staff and volunteers, and at the end of every ministry year, I would give them a survey and evaluation of the ministry, but part of it was of me. I really wanted to get feedback from them on my leadership and shepherding, and one of the questions that I always asked was, I said, okay, I want you to be honest with me about how much you see the fruit of the Spirit in my life. And I think I asked them to give a 1 through 10 on love, joy, peace, patience. Go down the list. Do you see this in my life? And I did this year after year, and every year the one that they saw the least in my life was patience, year after year after year. So I just cut that one from the survey going forward because I'm like, I already know the answer to that. I don't need to ask. Let's just move on.
I'm just wondering why you've never given us and the family a chance to fill out that survey.
Of me?
Yeah.
I have done some dad surveys of the kids before.
That would be a fun job.
I already know the answer. Why do I have to do that?
I think it should be just you giving the survey so we get to all evaluate you.
Okay. Dear
but we don't really want to get the feedback the other way. Let's just do it for the dad.
I am going to make a promise to our podcast friends right now. I will take Amy up on her suggestion. And I will do this survey with the kids, ask them to
Do I get to fill out
No,
too?
just me. Like you said, this was just Dad.
Yeah, no,
I
but I
like
mean,
your
like, do
idea.
I get to be a participant? Do I get to fill out the
No, I
survey?
have to have boundaries.
No, why
with
can't
that,
I
because
fill
I
out
get
the
that
survey?
feedback plenty. I don't think I'm not going to learn anything
I think it'd be
from
good
that.
for you to have it in written form. You can review it. It'd be good.
What I'm willing to commit to today is the child survey, and I will report back.
Okay, but that includes our adult children too.
Yes, I will report back. I will aggregate the feedback for you. I will not, et cetera. But this will be a really
Catalog
great
it.
conversation, and I think it's important for us to get back on subject and what we're talking about today. Okay, so matter of fact, this is a good question for you right now. What would you say, honey, since I'm preparing for an extensive evaluation and reporting, what would you say is an area where you see yourself struggling to be patient? Like what parenting situations are just extra tough for you?
Okay. Well, I want to go back in the parenting time clock to first say that by far, the first time I experienced this level of impatience and difficulty in parenting is because of potty training. Potty training took for me to a whole new level. Like, now, be honest, this is an honest question. In general, would you say I'm a more patient person or not a patient person?
I would say you're a more patient person.
Right. In general.
In general.
Yeah.
Like you don't get ranked lowest on that on an annual
Generally
basis
speaking,
like others.
yes, like others. Hypothetically, like others. Like in general. So, and in general, I handle chaos and noise and that. So a lot of people will tell me frequently, "You're so patient."
Sure.
But it was potty training that just was, I was not able to hold it together, and that's a whole other podcast. We really need to do a podcast on potty training
Oh, that'd be great.
No, it's really important. I have tips for moms because it is like this. That was a crossroad in parenting to me where I just was like, it was the first time I lost it with my kids, like in the sense of, like, actually I yelled. You know what I mean? Yelled at just because I was so. It was just.
It's a dark day.
It was a dark day. Yeah, it's a dark time. It was not a day. And I learned, you learn between 1 and 2 kids, 1, 2, and 3. That's the advantage as a lot of kids is you get to kind of, I didn't have any of those experiences with Rush. I finally figured it out. But so that's number one. If you have young kids and potty training, that was really hard to keep your patience in that. The other just one is that whenever my kids are doing some sort of behavior that is really pushing my buttons, like it's an issue that I resonate with. So, for example, when my daughter gets really negative and talks negatively about situation, talks negatively about herself, I will be very impatient. I will, come back that probably more harshly than I should, or I don't have a lot of compassion for it because it's triggering something in me that it really annoys me about myself. And so when something annoys me about myself and I see it in my kids, I'm like, right there, and I'm less patient with dealing with that. It's much easier for me to deal with problems in my kids that are not things that I struggle with personally.
Yeah. I liked what you talked about before. You're talking about the situation with our W and just like expectations, realistic expectations for him at age 6. I think this is especially true when it comes to being impatient with our teenagers. Like if you think about how a child from 10 to 20 grows through those years, I find myself in the trap of expecting that every year they are going to be more mature, more godly, more responsible, more disciplined. So if you had a graph, like every year, better and better and better and better and better. And none of us as adults, if we looked back to our life from 10 to 20, we would never say every single year, every single month, I just got more responsible and more mature and more godly. We had these huge ups and downs through all of those years. So part of it is asking God to help us set proper and realistic expectations that our kids' growth really is going to be 2 steps forward and 1 step back if they're making progress.
And how would you feel about those push button issues for you as well in parenting with the kids, like situations that push your buttons with impatience?
Yeah, I would say one for me is being on time, not being somewhere or not doing something that you say that you're going to do. So even the other night with Lainey, she wanted to go out. I wasn't home. I said, text me when you leave and text me when you get back. That was my clear instruction to her. Well, she texted me when she arrived at the place, and she texted me when she left the place. And so later that night, I was extremely impatient and frustrated with her over that because I didn't say text me when you arrived and when you left. I said these sorts of things. So just lack of paying attention to detail, following through.
Because punctuality is really important to you,
Right.
and so it hits that
button.
It hits that button.
Yep.
Well, the thing that I find encouraging is that you really can only learn patience by practicing being patient. I had a wonderful mentor, Debbie Gottlieb. I think I might have referred to her before, but she is the one who sort of helped me and ushered me with those beginning years of homeschooling. But she would always say that to me. It's like, you get patient by practicing. You know what I mean? That's how you're going to grow, And so God's going to continue to put you in situations over and over where you are going to be naturally impatient because you're not going to improve without practicing. And I felt like that was just a real great encouragement because there's this idea that I hear a lot of people say, well, I'm not a naturally patient person, or they assume, especially as, when I was homeschooling, they say, oh, I don't know how you homeschooling, you must be so patient. And I was like, well, I'm actually learning to be patient because I'm constantly in a situation where I have to practice it. And when you know that you struggle with this area or that you desire to grow in patience, then it does help you take those opportunities that the Lord gives you to be more intentional about practicing. And what I mean by that, like those basic opportunities that we deal with in our regular life, the grocery store line, that's just the person in front of you that, the problem that you thought you were getting out of the store quickly and now you're in a long line and you're caught. And, that's a great opportunity to practice patience. It's a great opportunity to practice patience when you are driving and, you're stuck behind one slow driver, to not be frustrated and to intentionally work on practicing patience. And what I mean by that is these situations with people who are strangers, the people that we don't have any personal history or relationship with, those are great situations to work on intentionally saying, okay, I'm really going to work at not being frustrated. Lord, help me to just accept that this is the line I'm in. Help me to accept that I'm not going to be able to make it on time to this. Help me to accept these things, because those little situations actually are training grounds, are helping us prepare to be patient with the people that we do love in our home, because it is harder to be patient at home often than it is in those other situations. But just remembering, it was always encouraging to me how much Debbie told that, you will get patient through practice. You'll get patient through practice. And understanding that how I'm interacting with every single person is a reflection of Jesus in me. Like, if I'm frustrated with the cashier, I always would envision that person walking into church and, seeing me up, seeing you preaching, or seeing, like, what if I was rude, or what if I was impatient with them in that moment? What kind of testimony would that be if they walked into church on Sunday? Those kind of things, to be thinking about the kind of testimony that we have, also will encourage us.
Right. I remember you asked me areas where I was struggling with impatience. Another big one for me, big struggle for me, is with multitasking. So if I am working on the dishes and I'm checking email and a kid comes and talks to me, hey, Dad, such and such, and all of a sudden, like, I snap at them. Well, they didn't do anything wrong. They just came to ask my help with their homework or tell me something about their day. But because I was focused on the dishes and email at the same time, and now a third thing came in. So that is, I do a whole lot better. I am a whole lot more patient and loving when God is helping me just do one thing at a time, moving more slowly, sometimes even physically moving more slowly, mentally moving more slowly, like from one thing to the other. Then that allows, if there's an interruption, it allows me to absorb that and handle that without freaking out. You had talked about, when you do lose your cool with the kids, or when you do get impatient, you do get harsh, asking the Holy Spirit to help you, asking God to teach you patience. How do you handle that with the kids? Like, if you blew your stack Are you like confessing to them too, or how does that work?
Yes, absolutely. I think it's really important that we confess to the kids when we've lost our patience or yelled at them or spoken to them harshly or even just said, I think, reckless words, that we regret saying, that we need to confess that to them. But I also just want to get back to this concept of really just encouraging, this idea when you hear people say, I hear that frequently, I'm just not a patient person, that to stop, saying that over ourselves, because I think a lot of the ways that we think about ourselves will come out naturally in our personality. So instead of just kind of saying, well, I can't do that because I'm not a patient person, instead kind of switching that to, Lord, I struggle with being patient. Lord, please help me to operate more in your spirit. Help me, right, Lord, to not operate the way I naturally want to operate, but Holy Spirit, please help me, teach me to be patient. I'm always, being eager to learn and eager to grow instead of just kind of putting that label on ourselves. And I think that's also very important because it's teaching our children not to do that as well, because our kids are going to struggle. They struggle with impatience just the same way. And I'd like to add to that it's also helpful when I've struggled with impatience and lost it with the kids. And that's, I keep putting those two things together. But in parenting, that's often how impatient looks. It comes out as yelling or snapping or being disrespectful to our kids, the way that we're speaking to them or talking to them. And one thing I found that really helps the kids, like they'll often turn around, right, and be pretty nasty to each other, right? Siblings will react the same way and be rude or snappy to each other. And I've always been able to kind of sit down and say to them, work on this now. Practice this now with your sibling. Like, I know when JD says those things to you, RW, that totally aggravates you and frustrates you and you want to haul off and hit him. I get it. You know what I mean? Or you want to lash out back at him. But just realize that this is good practice for you, because I assure you that as you get to be a parent and you're frustrated, the same frustration you feel towards JD right now will be frustration that you'll experience with your own kids someday. So if you learn now how to be patient with JD, you actually can learn that it's going to help you be a patient father someday. And I've always been amazed how the kids resonate with that, because they know that hurt from a parent. They know how it feels when we are rude to them or yell at them. They don't like that feeling. And, it just gives them this kind of humanity to it. Like, we all have to practice. And guess what? You have an opportunity to practice right now. And the better you're at it now, it's going to help you in your future family.
Yeah. Well, today a lot of our conversation has focused on asking God to help us love our kids by being patient. But a final encouragement for you, a big part of this is for us as parents learning to be patient with God. I want other people to understand that I'm growing slowly, right? I want my dear wife to understand in these chronic areas where I'm falling short, look, I'm growing slowly. Please be patient with me. But with everybody around me, I want them to get better faster. I want them to accelerate. And so part of it for me, what I'm actually needing to learn is to be patient with God, that your sanctification is not ultimately my project. It's the Holy Spirit's project. The kids' growth and sanctification, they are God's kids more than my kids. So one of the things you can do in your prayer life is ask God not only to give you a spirit of patience with your kids, a spirit of patience for yourself, because you're going to continue to fall short, but also ask God to give you a spirit of patience toward Him, so that you're really trusting Him with His timeline of how He is working in the hearts of your children, how He is working in the heart of your spouse. A lot of these principles that we've been talking about today come from our book, Healing Family Relationships. Healing Family Relationships. You can get that wherever you buy your books, but we'd like to give away 10 copies of that book today, Healing Family Relationships. We would be happy to send a copy to the first 10 people who email us to request it at podcast@visionaryfam.com. So you just send an email, podcast@visionaryfam.com. I'd like to receive the copy of Healing Family Relationships. Give us your mailing address, and we will send that off to you. Thank you for taking this time to be with us today as we ask God to help us grow in our faith and in our family relationships. We're excited for our next time with you on Family Vision.